Racism has been impacting the WNBA well before this year. This is not a new thing. Sure. This is, and in that way, I do think Caitlin's being used as a pawn. Mm-hmm. Caitlin didn't bring racism to the WNBA. This has been happening. And that, I think, is what's been such a shock for all of us, that other people are surprised by this.
Mm-hmm. You know what's wild? Watching everyone act shocked right now, like this all came out of nowhere. But if you've actually been paying attention, really paying attention, this moment felt inevitable. This was always going to explode, and honestly, it exploded right here. That's why you're going to want to stay locked in all the way to the end. Because once you see the full picture, you'll understand why the Indiana Fever are standing at the edge of some massive franchise-defining decisions. Just days ago, the Fever dropped a string of major announcements, moves that instantly shifted the conversation around the league, including a revelation involving their superstar, Caitlin Clark, that sent shockwaves through the WNBA. And right in the middle of all that chaos, something even bigger happened. The legend herself, Sue Bird, stepped forward and flat out called out the racism she's been watching fester in the league. Let's be honest, this conversation was overdue by years. Generations of legends, MVPs, Olympic gold medalists. They endured the same treatment quietly, shouldering it without ever being given the space to speak freely. Until now, Sue didn't speak just to make noise either. She came with fire, with facts, with a level of honesty you couldn't scroll past. And the Indiana Fever? They didn't just hear her. They responded in a way that could reshape their future. And trust me, before we break that part down, you'll want to hit like and stay subscribed, because once this story starts unfolding, it does not slow down.
There is one thing I want to reset, that we want to reset, and it's the language being used around fans. Mm-hmm. Fever fans, Caitlin fans, new fans. That actually has to...
Here's the part that really turned heads. Sue Bird, with her legacy firmly on the line, didn't hesitate for a second. She sat down for a completely no-holds-barred podcast conversation with Megan Rapinoe. And make no mistake, that wasn't a safe move. That was risky. Career risky. But Sue leaned all the way in anyway. During that conversation, she asked the questions most people were way too uncomfortable to even say out loud. Why was Caitlin Clark suddenly becoming a lightning rod for racial hostility? Why were her record-breaking accomplishments, her jaw-dropping ticket sales, her undeniable impact on the league being minimized or outright dismissed? And then Sue went even further. She hinted at something that made people freeze mid-scroll. A potential systemic issue within the league itself. Not accidental. Not random. A pattern. A structure. And possibly, yes, a coordinated effort working against Caitlin rather than alongside her rise. That was the moment when this stopped being just another sports debate and became something much heavier. And if you're still trying to process that, don't worry, you're not alone. Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation is bigger than any one episode.
Yeah. Did you, when you went and kind of swatted at Caitlin, did you intend to hit her in the eye? And if so, could you just, or if not, either way, could you talk about what happened on that play?
I don't even know why I would intend to hit anybody in the eye. That doesn't even make sense to me. But no, I didn't. I didn't know I hit her, actually. I was trying to make a play on the ball, and I guess I followed through and I hit her. So obviously it's never intentional. That's not even like the type of player that I am. So yeah.
Did you and Marina kind of laugh about it afterwards? It looked like there was later on in the game they caught you guys laughing about it.
No, I just told you I didn't even know I hit her, so I can't laugh about something I didn't know happened.
So where did everything actually boil over? The spark came post-game, when Dijanai Carrington was asked a question by journalist Christine. One that, on the surface, sounded pretty routine. The kind of question athletes hear all the time. And naturally, you'd expect that, right? Standard media stuff. Tough questions come with the territory. But this one landed differently. Almost instantly, Megan Rapinoe pushed back, pointing out that the phrasing wasn't as harmless as it looked. According to her, the question carried a racial undertone that felt impossible to ignore once you really listened closely. Just like that, the entire framing of the situation flipped. What once looked like a harmless exchange became a starting point for a much deeper discussion about bias, perception, and how narratives are built in real time. And from that moment on, there was no going back to a simple explanation. If you're still following the chain reaction here, make sure you stay with me, because this thread keeps pulling and pulling.
Hearing it initially, my visceral reaction was like, that's not good. That doesn't feel good. That feels racist, to be honest.
Let's not sugarcoat this. The word that kept coming up was racist. And Sue Bird, being exactly who she's always been, refused to let that slide. She didn't tiptoe around it. She went straight at the source, calling out media coverage, especially ESPN, for turning a single moment into something far more explosive than it needed to be. Her point was precise and powerful. The original question on its own might not have been racist, but the way it was framed, packaged, and blasted across headlines, that's where the real problem lived. Sue pointed to a truth that's uncomfortable but undeniable. Athletes of color are scrutinized harder, criticized louder, and given far less grace than their white counterparts. Think about it. When a black athlete is involved in a tense moment, it's rarely treated as just that. It escalates. It becomes an issue, a controversy, and way too often, it turns racial whether anyone asked for that or not. That double standard has been there for years. And Sue finally said the quiet part out loud. And if that hit close to home for you, go ahead and tap subscribe. These are the conversations mainstream coverage keeps dodging.
Disagree with you on Christine Brennan's question being dickish, or maybe she shouldn't have answered it, because it was something that was out there that everybody was talking about. And so she asked the question, and it was a great opportunity for Carrington to, on the record, say, no, I didn't do it. And that's all that happened. So I do disagree with you. I don't think it was a dickish question. I think it was a fine question based on what was going on at the moment.
Sue didn't stop there. She immediately zoomed out and made it clear this wasn't an isolated incident. This was part of a much bigger, deeply rooted pattern that's been ignored far too long. And she said all of this almost casually, like this reality was already baked into her understanding of the league. Journalist Christine, for her part, owned her role and didn't shy away from accountability. She openly criticized both the WNBA and the media ecosystem for allowing rumors and harmful narratives to spiral unchecked, even if that wasn't her original intention. But Sue's most cutting insight came next. She argued that if Dijanai Carrington were white, this story likely would have fizzled out almost immediately. Barely a headline, barely a discussion. And yet, paradoxically, if the situation were flipped the other way, the media would have produced a fully polished narrative, complete with emotional arcs, context, and sympathy. That's the contradiction. That's the double standard. And the more you see it, the harder it is to unsee. Let me know in the comments if this pattern feels familiar to you.
Led to the Twitter trolls and bots taking over. And what started there was this narrative of petty, jealous players hating on Caitlin. Mm-hmm. That's really what happened. That's where it started. That we must just dislike her, that we look at her side-eyed, that we don't want her to come in the WNBA and be successful, that we're hating on her, right? So we're petty.
And then came the aftermath, an absolute social media wildfire. Twitter turned into a battleground overnight, flooded with bots, trolls, and bad faith takes pushing a single toxic idea. That players were jealous of Caitlin Clark, that they hated her success, that they simply didn't want her to win. The narrative was blunt and harmful. They're petty. They're envious. They despise her. And here's where things spiraled completely out of control. Sue painstakingly traced the origin of this chaos back to one comment. Just one, from Diana Taurasi. A legend. A living icon. A voice powerful enough to move the entire league with a sentence. That single remark sent ripples no one could contain. And suddenly, basketball wasn't the focus anymore. Hate speech crept in. Racism escalated. Conversations about privilege and power drowned out the game itself. Sue made it clear. Once hate enters the picture, the sport loses something vital. Competition turns toxic. Dialogue turns destructive. And that's when lines get crossed that are almost impossible to walk back. If you're here for honest conversations about where the WNBA is headed, and not just highlight reels, Make sure you like this video and stay subscribed, because this story is far from over.
Did I think anybody was playing dirty against Caitlyn? Not at any point did I think Caitlyn was targeted. And I'm going to stop on that word, because what happened was these petty jealousy narratives that got formed. Then when the season started and people saw people blocking Caitlyn's shot or picking her up full court, it then became, oh, they're targeting her.
And then Sue Bird dropped another reality check that stopped people cold. She revealed that Caitlin Clark wasn't just dealing with the usual physicality of professional basketball. The elbows, the trash talk, the hard fouls that come with playing at this level. No, this was something far darker. Caitlin was navigating real threats, real fear, and real hostility that went well beyond basketball strategy. Sue made it clear, this wasn't metaphorical. Caitlin wasn't just bracing for tough defense. She was constantly on edge, mentally preparing for situations that no player should ever have to think about just to step on the court. And according to Sue, some players weren't simply playing hard. They were being openly malicious, mocking her, targeting her, trying to chip away at her beyond the game itself. Sue refused to downplay the racial element either. She explained that Caitlin's situation existed at the intersection of race, privilege, resentment, and perception. It wasn't just about her talent or her popularity. It became symbolic. To some, Caitlin's success represented a broader system they felt excluded from, and those frustrations were being projected onto her. Sue didn't mince words. This stopped being a basketball issue a long time ago. It became a live demonstration of how unresolved racial tension and systemic frustration spilled directly onto the court, with Caitlin Clark caught squarely in the middle. And if that doesn't make you pause, it should.
Right now, like, it's popping right now, and just being able to know that, like, I'm happy where we are. I'm happy to see all the girls being able to pop it and look cute on the runway and being able to continue that.
Now, shifting gears, some of the loudest voices pushing back were Angel Reese and Alysa Thomas. Both have been outspoken, very outspoken, arguing that Caitlin Clark is benefiting from what they call the white girl pass. And they haven't kept that critique private. They've openly accused Caitlin and portions of her fan base of operating through racial bias. Sue Bird didn't dodge this topic either. In her signature straight-shooting style, she addressed both Angel Reese and Alysa Thomas directly. Almost like she'd been holding on to these thoughts for a while and finally felt the moment demanded honesty. Angel Reese, ever since her explosive LSU run, has never been shy about asserting herself. Alysa Thomas, meanwhile, is a pillar of the Connecticut Sun, a player whose legacy and leadership are unquestioned. Both women argue that Caitlin has become the league's poster child for white privilege, claiming she's receiving special treatment not because of skill, but because of optics. It's a serious accusation, and Sue acknowledged that. But she also made one thing clear. This argument ignited a powder keg and sent the entire discourse spiraling into something far more destructive than constructive.
All of what I've said led to this group of people being able to push those racist agendas, which really has been, in my opinion, the cause of all of this. And everybody from this moment on has, not everybody, but a lot of people have been operating under the assumption that these narratives, particularly the targeting narrative, is true.
So how did Sue respond to those accusations? Simply put, she shut them down. Completely. Sue Bird made it her mission to dismantle the white privilege narrative piece by piece, calling it flawed, misleading, and ultimately harmful. According to Sue, this claim doesn't hold up under scrutiny at all. She said it plainly, this is not what's happening. And pushing that narrative, in her view, does real damage, not just to Caitlin Clark, but to the league as a whole. Sue believes it tears players apart instead of elevating the game. It fuels resentment instead of accountability. To her, suggesting Caitlin's success is undeserved doesn't challenge power. It undermines excellence. And coming from players with influence, Sue argued that this framing only adds gasoline to an already volatile fire.
Racism has been impacting the WNBA well before this year. This is not a new thing. Sure. This is, and in that way, I do think Caitlin's being used as a pawn. Caitlin didn't bring racism to the WNBA. This has been happening. And that, I think, is what's been such a shock for all of us, that other people are surprised by this.
Here's the heart of Sue Bird's stance, the part she kept circling back to. Yes, Caitlin Clark gets a massive amount of attention. No one is denying that. But to say it's only because she's white is lazy, incorrect, and dismissive of her actual greatness. Sue made it clear, Caitlin commands attention because she's special. A generational talent. Period. Sue argued that the entire situation has been twisted into a narrative so far removed from reality that it's almost unrecognizable. And she wasn't about to let that stand, especially with Caitlin already living under a microscope. Sue understands the spotlight better than almost anyone. She earned hers through dominance, consistency, and impact. And she sees the same qualities in Caitlin. Caitlin doesn't receive attention by accident. She earns it every time she steps on the floor. And Sue was adamant, confusing excellence with privilege doesn't solve injustice. It just creates new victims.
Obviously doing amazing. Her game speaks for itself. I think my favorite part is just women's basketball, women's sports really, but women's basketball has been on the rise. And it's kind of like what Magic and Bird was to men's basketball. Like this moment, we kind of needed something.
This is
to
that
just
moment.
and Caitlin's that moment. And I think a lot of it has to do with her logo.
Now brace yourself, because this might be the most explosive revelation of all. Sue Bird revealed that she has actually spoken to Caitlin Clark directly. Not casually, personally. She took the time to truly know her, to understand her journey, her mindset, and the kind of pressure she's been carrying. And that alone completely dismantles the narrative Angel Reese and Alysa Thomas have been pushing so aggressively. Sue is adamant. Caitlin Clark is not some sheltered, privileged athlete skating by on appearance alone. Like every elite player in this league, she has worked relentlessly. She has grinded. She earned everything she has. And according to Sue, reducing her to a symbol instead of recognizing her labor is not just inaccurate, it's irresponsible. Sue openly admitted that the issue is complicated. Deeply complicated. She even acknowledged why, in some moments, people resort to using that narrative. It's an easy deflection. It's convenient when tough questions come up. But here's the reality. Caitlin's fan base isn't some monolithic, singular group. The Indiana Fever audience is massive and diverse. What we're actually talking about is a small, toxic subset hijacking visibility to spread hate. Those individuals aren't real fans. They're posing as fans while pushing racial agendas, fueling online abuse, and weaponizing division. And Sue made it painfully clear. This situation has gone from bad to dangerous. She believes the racial debate surrounding Caitlin has been cynically weaponized, turning into an excuse for players to mistreat her not just verbally, but physically on the court. That's where Sue drew the hardest line. Accusations of racism, she argued, are being misused as justification for targeting Caitlin, elbowing her, fouling her aggressively, and crossing boundaries that have nothing to do with basketball. This is no longer strategy. It's personal. And Sue was crystal clear. This is unacceptable. She emphasized that acknowledging racism in the league is necessary, essential. But what's happening now is not progress, it's destruction. Instead of uniting players and fans, this situation is tearing everything apart. Caitlin is taking the brunt of it. Between verbal abuse, physical targeting, and public misrepresentation, the pressure has become overwhelming. Sue referenced specific moments, including cheap shots that clearly had nothing to do with making a basketball play. Even Caitlin herself said it. Some of these hits weren't basketball actions. They were statements. And when Sue says the racial bias conversation has been weaponized, she means it's now serving no one. Not the players, not the league, and not the cause it claims to support. From there, the conversation widened. What happens next? What will the Indiana Fever do as the 2025 season approaches? Sue made it clear. This division does not reflect what the Fever stand for, nor what the WNBA should represent. Change is coming, and it's coming fast. Caitlin, as Sue described, is relentlessly competitive. She wants to win everything, games, drills, moments. That mindset has elevated everyone around her. She makes teammates better. She raises the energy. And honestly, even Sue admitted that Caitlin exceeded expectations simply because no one fully grasped the scale of her impact. Now the front office is shifting dramatically. Amber Cox has arrived. Kelly Krauskopf is back. A new general manager is in place. This winter will be ruthless. Players will come and go. Friendships will be tested. And yes, Sue all but confirmed that head coach Christie's sides will not survive the offseason. The Indiana Fever are about to be completely reshaped around Caitlin Clark. And when the 2025 season tips off, this team will look very different, stronger, sharper, and far more serious about competing at the highest level. So the question is unavoidable. Where do they go from here? Can this rebuilt roster push into the top 4? Can the Fever finally turn chaos into contention? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit subscribe, and stay with Court Queens, because this next chapter is just getting started.